Welcome to Experience Innovation, a podcast series brought to you by Accenture Interactive in Australia. In this series, we're talking with industry leaders to discuss the latest in digital innovation and the experience battlefield. Now over to our host for today.
Good morning. I'm Tracy Gawthorne. I'm here reporting live in our Accenture Interactive pop-up studio, and I'm pleased this morning to have two incredible guests. We have Matt from the Monkeys and Bronwyn from Fjord, both part of Accenture Interactive, and here today to help us uncover experience as the new battleground and talking about what's happening in the CMO agenda, what we need to look out for, and share some experiences on what's working well around the world and some of the gaps that we need to fill. So welcome, Matt and Bronwyn. Matt, can you just tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and why you think experience is the new battleground?
Yeah, sure. I'm Matt Michel. I'm the Managing Director of The Monkeys. The Monkeys is a creative services agency that's based here in Australia. We have about 150 employees and we're part of Accenture Interactive. Why experience or CMOs? Which one should we start with?
Let's go CMOs first.
Look, I think we're seeing, and they're intertwined, those questions. The CMOs and the role of the CMO is changing a lot in the industry. I think there's two reasons for that, and there's lots of reasons, but there's two that I'll talk to. They are becoming closer to the customer experience. So we're seeing actually a lot of CMO roles fall under the Chief Customer Officer, and naturally that means they have to take more into account the customer and bring it back to a customer-centric view. So naturally, experience is becoming a bigger part of what they do, and so it's hitting higher on their agenda. At the same time, the role of the CMO is becoming more and more important to be closer to the C-suite, so the CEO and everyone in that, as well as the board. And I think they're trying to move back to a place where they're gaining trust. One of our clients actually gave me a stat this week that came from, I think, CMO magazine, that said 2 out of 3 CEOs distrust their CMO, which is pretty significant. So I think we've been in a world where CMOs have had a license to do whatever they want, use their budget, splash it here or there. And now with the accountability that comes with data and research and more real-time data, CMOs are having to be much more accountable for what they're doing. And as a result of that, they've got to build back that trust with their CEO to get that seat at the table and have a function around that organization. So I think you've kind of got a bunch of things going on there, but trust is a big part of it, and CMOs delving more into the experience is another big part of that as well.
Thanks, Matt. And Bron, introduction from you, and also building on what Matt said, what are the things that you're seeing in the work that you do with Fjord?
So, hi Tracy, my name's Bronwyn Vandamm and I head up Fjord here in Australia. We are a design and innovation capability. So the thing that we're really seeing is organisations are increasingly trying to unify the brand promise with the customer experience. So we work very closely with the Monkeys and in various clients, and really I kind of think about them as making the promises, and our job is to keep those promises. But it's a real challenge, and I think a lot of organisations are really struggling because experience is so all-encompassing. It's every touch point that you have with a customer, that they have with your brand, from sort of awareness and acquisition and onboarding through all of the service experience touch points, so that whole end-to-end customer journey. It's also all of the sort of social and brand channels and, all the sort of marketing and comms that they have. And it's across every channel. So it's thinking about physical, digital, call centre, retail, all those different touch points. So if you think about the job of trying to coordinate all of those touch points into a holistic and coherent brand experience where the customer always gets what they want in an effective and an efficient way that's simple and delightful, it's a challenging ask. And it requires coordination across the whole organisation and for people to work collaboratively across all the different silos of channel and product to really stitch together that end-to-end customer journey. So we're helping organisations try to do that and trying to execute that, but it is a significant challenge.
And interestingly, I've seen a statistic that says that 80% of organisations believe they are delivering a great customer experience, but the reality is that their customers, only about 8% believe that to be true. So that's the size of the gap. So what are the first steps organisations can take to start closing that gap, Matt?
Yeah, I think the first step is they need to realise that brand is bigger than just the advertising that you're putting out there. It's the whole experience, as Bron just said. The touch points and any interaction with that organisation really is a brand moment. That's where you're engaging with the customer. The comms that go out, as Bron said, set up that promise. This is what you can expect from us, and that experience has to deliver on that promise. So I think the steps they need to take are realizing that all those touch points add up to something, and then secondly, isolating what those touch points are and addressing any deficiencies in them. And we're seeing a lot of customers do that. They're spending a lot of time on their customer experience. They're realizing that they need to compete at a level that's equivalent to the customer's experience outside of either their organization or their category. So, the relationship they have with other brands such as Uber or Google, where that's their expectation of what good customer experience is. And so they're seeing kind of the expectation of their customers increase and grow, and they're looking at how they can meet that challenge. I think that's the key starting place for any organization.
And Bron?
So I absolutely agree. The thing that we would talk to customers about, our clients about, is really starting with the user. So starting with really understanding deeply the experience of the end user currently. So a lot of organisations think they understand what their customers experience when they interact with the brand, but often they're the very worst judge because they know their industry and their organisation very well. So they're incredibly familiar with all of their products and services and touch points, and they think everybody else understands their business just as well as they do. And so they go into designing customer experiences with all of their assumptions and all of their internal knowledge, whereas customers obviously don't have that. And so we really encourage our clients to take an outside-in approach, to really go out and experience through research, ethnographic research, looking at data and analytics, looking at all of the different experiences that their customers have, to really get to the truth, to find those insights, to understand customers' contexts and the role that you play in their lives and how you're fulfilling that or not currently, and using that as a starting point to redesign the experience. So, yeah, it's really about that human-centred or user-centred design process is where I would recommend clients start.
It's interesting that you talk about starting with the human-centred design, because one of the challenges in Australia at the moment corporately is lack of trust in corporate Australia and brands themselves. So we've talked about it a little bit, and there's been a lot going on in the marketplace. What role do you see this unification of brand promise and experience having in helping re-establish trust for brands in the marketplace? Bron?
Well, it's clearly critical. If you're making promises and not reliably keeping them, you're not going to have the trust of your customers. It's really as simple as that. So I think trust is built up, by the brand experience and all of those touch points. So it's about being true to your word. It's about being reliable. It's about being responsive. It's about being honest, and being ethical, obviously, as well. But I think trust is sometimes seen as this sort of very big kind of unwieldy concept, but actually at the end of the day, if you think about what it requires to be trusted in a human relationship, the qualities that you expect of somebody you trust, it's exactly the same things with organisations. So I think if you can deliver on your promises in a consistent and reliable way, you're going to start to gain your customers' trust.
And Matt, how are you seeing this play out in the brand strategy and the communication strategy work you're doing?
The need for trust hasn't changed over time. I think that's always been a critical part of wanting to deal with an organisation, and as a customer, you deal with an organisation. I think what's changed recently is the kind of transparency of that trust. So, with the digital world that we live in, you can't hide behind anything. You have to be very real and authentic and true. So those little moments all have to live up. If they don't, someone's jumping on Twitter straight away and they're going to let you know. Or worse, it's a promise that you're making and your company's not delivering it. They're shouting about it wherever they can. So I think the idea of trust it hasn't changed, but the transparency and the ability to call you out or not meeting your promise and therefore eroding trust is bigger. What that means from a brand strategy point of view is that we need to go back to truth. And that's kind of the key part of what we do in our process. When we do a brand strategy, when we look at what is the brand promise that we'll put out there for a client, it's really about kind of uncovering what is the essence, what is the key of their brand, and being true to that. So, if you do that, if you are true to your essence, if you are true to facts of authenticity, then you won't have a problem putting that brand promise out, and you won't have a problem living up to it. You may have to work at your experience and the operation that that sits behind that and the layers that ladder up to it, but you won't ever be caught out for being, not yourself. And so that's kind of our focus when we go into the brand strategy process.
It's interesting there because you call out the different layers that are necessary to ladder up to the brand strategy and the brand promise. And there are multiple layers and sometimes forgotten, like the internal organisation. So what are the changes that you're seeing around really trying to integrate from the inside out as well as the outside in? Matt?
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing that will change and will do the best for growth in an organisation. This is what will manifest the biggest change, and it's about aligning those layers. And we talked about it a little bit this morning, the 3 layers, front stage, mid stage, backstage, being kind of the customer experience, the business process as that middle layer, and the data and analytics as that back end layer. And that's kind of the new part of it. The back end layer is kind of risen in importance, the data and analytics that we can pull out of lots of different channels, feeding into insights, feeding into the business process, feeding into the customer experience is a big change that's happened. Having those 3 things work together in some sort of harmony to deliver that front of stage experience is the key challenge for any organization now. I think, historically, those 3 areas have happened in different parts of an organization in isolation of each other. Now, the organizations that are doing it well are somehow stitching these 3 things together. It doesn't have to be the same department working on it, but somehow they're organizing their business in a better way that brings those things closer together to work together better, and that ends up delivering that better customer experience.
And Bron, where are you seeing this come to life in ways that are really disrupting to add a very different and very real customer experience?
One of my favourite examples is Carnival Cruises. So we've been working with them for a few years now, and they asked us to reimagine the customer experience on their new cruise ship called the Edge. And when we started, we uncovered a whole bunch of pain points around, very analogue systems for crew where they were, using lots of paper and spreadsheets, and they really had no idea who the customer was that they were interacting with, who the guest was. And for the guest, they were trying to navigate the complexity of this whole kind of ship experience. And so we went in there and we helped them to design both the front stage experience, the guest experience, from sort of pre-boarding to the experience on the ship to post, and all of the touch points that you have in terms of navigating the ship. We also designed a crew experience and all the tools that help them to actually understand who the customer is. And then we worked to embed within the whole ship the technology and the data and analytics to enable this experience. And it all came together through something called the Medallion, which is a wearable technology that has in it things like payments, RFID to know your location, loyalty, personal information. And so this acts as like a key that unlocks this experience for guests. So, for example, if I get on and I order a Negroni at the bar on the top floor on my first night, on the second night, if I go to a different bar, the bartender can say, "Hi, Bronwyn, how are you? Would you like a Negroni again?" Because they've got all this information about you that's sort of driving this very personalised and tailored experience. So I think that's a really fantastic example of using data, technology, wearables to drive a really coherent experience for both the front stage and the backstage, all underpinned by data and analytics. So we call this a living service, which is, a service that really transcends the current experience that most organisations deliver. It's an experience that changes in real time around a customer based on data and analytics that's intelligent and contextually aware and becomes more intelligent over time as it gets to know the customer better. I think that's a really standout example.
Excellent. And I'm sure we'll all be watching Carnival Cruises closely to see how that all plays out. Now, as technology is changing so quickly, as customer expectations are changing, what do you see as the critical success factors for CMOs in the near term? Matt?
I think it's going to be about what they focus on and how they focus their organizations around that. So I think it's going to be going to the customer experience, focus on that. I think it's going to be really understanding who they partner with and why they're partnering with them, and kind of thinking about what are they bringing from a capability standpoint externally versus internally, and how are they supplementing the capabilities they have in their organization and what they're doing. And I think it's about the relationships that they build within their organizations that will try to stitch together those different layers that we just talked about and give them a more important role within that organization. So I think if they kind of focus on those kind of 3 areas, they'll probably succeed and do well. And I think if you do all of those things, it's about disrupting, I guess, what's happening in their particular industry, what their particular offering is, and trying to stand out a bit more to the customers by delivering a better service.
Excellent. Bron?
I think I agree with everything Matt has just said. I don't think it's particularly easy, but I think it's absolutely critical. I think CMOs can play a really important role in terms of growth, really driving the growth agenda within an organisation. I think here in Australia we're seeing a lot of organisations going through big simplification programs, looking at how they can create cost efficiencies, taking a cost out of their business. But at some point that needs to sort of turn and shift and go back into growth mode. And I think that's where the CMO plays an amazing role, thinking about how they can use new ways of working to really drive innovation and to find new sources of revenue, so new revenue streams. I think a good example is Qantas. And we see Qantas is moving into lots of adjacent markets to drive new revenue, such as insurance or Qantas Wine, which has been very successful for them. So finding those new sources of revenue where they can pivot their organisation and really get behind that and deliver value for the bottom line.
So it's not an easy environment for CMOs. The industry's being disrupted and they're being disrupted. But thank you to Matt and Bron for sharing your insights and your experiences. And we'll be watching closely to see what's next on the CMO agenda. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, Tracy.
A special thank you to all our guests for taking the time to talk to us today. For more details, visit accenture.com.au and connect with the team via Accenture Australia's LinkedIn page. You've been listening to Experience Innovation, a podcast series brought to you by Accenture Interactive.